Okay, big things today.
Mm.
Good topics. We have been anticipating this day for many moons, and here we are. Um, I don't know if you want to just start. We can go through our little topic today.
Yeah. So of course we can begin with the topic, as you guys know. Let's start with the announcement, I suppose, which
Yes,
we are we're doing a 5-week free series in our Facebook group.
yes,
Um, and the reason why we're doing this is because while we were brainstorming things that were circulating um, online about relationships, what we've been through. And I guess that actually segues into our very first point here. Like what's going around in the market right now with coaches and what they're picking up from somebody else, and then, sharing, hoping that it's going to work. And what we're seeing is people fawning all over it. And I don't know if you know the term relative positioning. It's a form of socialization where people, groups, mind think, get swept up in the validation of each other, the edification of teachings that they are hoping are going to work, because they're desperate to try something to get what it is that they think they're missing.
yeah,
So yeah, with no real steps, with no real experience, with a lot of needing to give yourself away in order to receive.
yeah,
And so there's nothing that really leads anyone back towards themselves to be able to come from a place of a true sense of yourself in whatever it is that you're driven by or what you're doing or being.
yeah.
So
Well, and we've created something called pieces, which what I've been witnessing as we've been creating this, as you've mentioned, is that there's so many things in the world that put people and relationships at odds, if you will. And like you said, it takes you further away from understanding who you are in relationship versus the societally cut or not societally cut boxes that people are creating for you to fit into.
mhm.
And it's a lot of ideology and not a lot of psychology, which is part of it. And it you get lost in the relational aspect with that coach or that teaching instead of coming back to, oh, wait a minute, maybe there is what I'm choosing. What I'm choosing is in line with that coach because it's directing me to what I want. But as
Mm,
you go through the steps, or not even the steps, there's no steps. It's usually just ideologies,
yeah,
nothing tangible. You're getting lost. And so we found that there were missing pieces.
yeah, it's
There were
interesting.
missing pieces.
We're fractured
Yeah.
pieces, they're missing pieces. And it
Yeah.
just feels like these things are actually scaring people more. I mean, I've known people who are participating in places where I've been in a group with them here, a group with them in there. I mean, I'm guilty of the same thing when I started to
Same.
do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I want us to start off with point one that we have written down. Why
Yeah. Yeah.
did we create pieces?
Yeah. So, I mean, pieces is to me the ultimate relationship experience. And it came from what we were observing in these different fragments. So, like, there's so many different areas where people are getting swept up into. So, like, off the top of our mind, we were brainstorming this. It was masculine, feminine, polarity teachings, hyper independent feminine, weak masculine, high masculine, low masculine.
Dominance,
Um,
submission.
Dominance, submission, like there's just so many areas where you literally go into and you're like, oh, wait a minute, this resonates, but why? Nobody really asked the questions why. And then as I started to kind of integrate certain things into my experience, and what that meant was seeing certain pathways and making very aware, conscious choices, my experience started to change. But that was a very internal experience. It had nothing to do with the paradigms that exist. And yet, in listening to that internal compass, much of what those teachings actually share happened very naturally without me needing to do anything.
Boom.
Yeah. And then,
There's a principle called foundations.
yes,
Work on your
yes,
foundations.
which we,
These address
yeah,
all the areas where we may have missed, and my students already know I speak a lot about separation and individuation phases,
yeah,
because that is the part where you start developing yourself. And if it's not completed, then you get stuck emotionally with things like, it's called objects relations, how you position yourself relative to yourself and others, inside out, outside
yeah,
and reflective stuff. And that stuff is real. And
it
what I
is.
see these groups doing is there's a leader, it's an asymmetric structure in they're an authority, and we have needs. This person is going to save you. They have all the answers for you, and follow them, listen to their stories, despite the fact that they tell really beautiful stories with their words. And this is also another part of understanding yourself at the core and foundation, so that we'll get into this a little bit more. And we'll even dig deeper in our 5-week free series that we've got going inside our Facebook group.
Yeah.
So what we were
So,
observing.
yeah. And yeah.
Oh, right. And you've written here, Jen, like what you experienced, and I've done the same.
Yeah.
So with our consequent clients, what they've experienced in terms of the contrast in their life when you actually set a proper foundation.
And pieces is really about that. It's stripping away everything so that you can actually come to the truth of the foundation. And you're more so awareness and consciousness is really about what's my physical reality looking like here, and can I address that here? And the metaphysical side of things is, can I step forward knowing that those steps are actually like moving me into the appropriate direction? And I think what the metaphysical side of things isn't addressing is those steps are very precise and they're simple steps, but the execution of those steps is what's hard for most people. So pieces is all about self understanding, the foundation in which you actually create, and then we take it a step further to put you into a place where you're actually creating from that nothingness that people talk about, but nobody ever takes you through the steps. And going through my own process, and this is why we came together, there are actually steps. Like, people don't want to program it, but it's like there are very real things. And as I started to take my clients through this, their shifts were not only holistic to themselves and very bespoke to themselves, but the results that they were getting were instant, because there was peace and there was harmony and there was finally synergy in the movements forward, because they could finally see it. But it had nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
It literally was their understanding and awareness and orientation of themselves and their world. So pieces was born from that.
Was born from
It was born from that.
I just want to add to what you just said there with the part where you said it has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
It's actually about the facilitation of the process for the person, where transference, counter transference happens.
Right.
It's a transpersonal space where things that are incomplete or have been put together in a way that is distorted and corrupted, and is like become the defense system which you rely upon, actually holding in the middle, like you captive, the true part of you that is underdeveloped, captive, which this defense system is actually preventing the growth of. It kind of like, okay, let's undo that. Let's shift it until the actual keys lock in place. It's where you consolidate those parts of you where you feel, oh my God, I'm so needy. I'm afraid I'm going to die alone.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to keep dating the same person. I'm going to keep experiencing the same pains. I'm totally afraid of betrayal. I'm terrified of this thing reoccurring again. That's not just because of a current past experience you've had, that's been locked in
Yeah.
the very developmental phases of incompletion.
Yeah.
From a totally regressed, immature, primitive mind, which your adult mind would not have made the same conclusions from in the first place.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that. So
Yeah.
that is what a good therapist's job is to do.
Yeah.
To facilitate unlocking that, looking at it, making sure that you understand that you do not have to be afraid approaching looking at it. A lot of people are afraid of their own minds, and
True.
making contact both with the defense system and also touching the core, because the defense system, when it inverts on itself like that, it attacks the inner core. And
Yeah.
we'll touch on this more in the 5-day challenge as well.
Yeah.
When your own defense system, which was originally formed to protect a very innocent self, and it starts inverting on itself, you start hollowing yourself out.
Yeah.
That's when people say things like, I feel empty. Everything I've tried has failed. All the successes that I've been after, everything that I've achieved, feel nothing. And that's not the same nothing as becoming the nothing that actually sets you free.
Yes.
Complete different orientation.
Yeah, it feels different entirely.
Yeah.
So what was cool about what we've created is we worked alongside Joanna, and she helped us create this beautiful PDF to help us encapsulate and actually communicate in a very concise manner, a few steps that you can take. And we've offered this up for free because we feel like this information should be mainstream, and it's not. And so we really wanted to speak to some of the pain points that I think women are feeling, and also men, but we're focusing on women for pieces this time. So we created this PDF so that you could see and pinpoint the relational experience that you're having and understand a few different elements, where we have societal ideals, and then we have the true self and what you're actually desiring. And there are distinct differences. But this PDF really takes you through that in a concise manner. And we wanted to give that to you guys for free. So we'll drop the link in the live after. If you want to add some more.
It's already in the description.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. And it's really beautiful. We're really proud of what this looks like and how it carries, because we think it's very relevant to where we are as a world today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Mainstream as well.
The mainstream things. Yeah. So if you want to add anything to that, you can, but.
Yeah. Okay. So PDF was born, and I love it. I love it. Thank goodness for you, Joanna. Thank you so much for helping us with this.
Yeah. Couldn't have done it without you. Yeah.
So proud of it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. So, who does this really serve? Who would benefit from this? One, well, if you're a woman and you have relationship issues, and you have a history of either coming from a toxic family dynamic, or even gotten out of one, you're still in one, doesn't matter. But a lot of the time, it doesn't matter whether you're where you are in the process of your life. It's relevant to all women, but we're also very intrigued by the fact that it has nothing to do with how financially independent you are, or if you're not. But we are mainly addressing the curiosity behind, no matter where you are, whether you're financially independent, a financially independent woman. And I think that's a good thing, by the way, to try to achieve that. And whether you're not, the same thing still happens to women. And this is a collective, subconscious, cultural thing. There are things that underlie this dynamic, which is what we also want to address. So it's So it's for women who really do not want to feel like they have to give up or abdicate some part of themselves, or abandon one part of themselves, or play a role in order to stop settling for toxic relationships, and then somehow hope that the potential of that relationship is going to change. But actually, to love yourself fully as a woman, regardless of, you have a masculine and a feminine side, you don't need to abdicate your intuition. You don't need to abdicate your strength. You don't have to abdicate your confidence or make it look a certain way or palatable for somebody else, just to be in a relationship, regardless of who it is, man or woman. But here we're addressing mostly, I think, those intimate relationships. Did you want to add any?
Yeah. I like adding to that. I feel like this was developed specifically for women at the start, and it's every woman, any woman that ever wants to have really beautiful relationships. At the end of the day, that's what it looks like. And I think we need to define beauty, because beauty is all of it. It's the conflict in relationships. It's the physical aspects of relationships. It's the communicative side of relationships. But there is a huge discord behind what that actually looks and feels like, and then what people in the society today would deem to be toxic relationships. And a lot of times that toxicity really does stem with the ability for people to discern in themselves what they bring to the table that makes it toxic, what they're choosing that makes it toxic. And a lot of times I think this does often serve that hyper independent woman, or that woman who really craves devotion.
Yeah.
And that want and desire to have a devotional experience. We want to, well, I'll be so bold to say that I am somebody that wants a devotional experience. But I couldn't actually have that until I understood the devotion within myself. And so this program really serves people, and women specifically, who are wanting that, who maybe have attained other things in their lives. So like maybe you do have financial independence, maybe you have created a life you're really proud of, but that love component with a man or whomever, or even with family members, this stems far beyond just a relationship with a counterpart. It's literally your entire physical makeup. It's for you. If you haven't quite gotten there, if you've literally tapped out everything, if you keep absorbing other people's stuff and it's still not working, there are real steps that you're quote unquote missing. And really they all point to you at the end of the day. So the PDF pieces, this 5-part series, this is really for the woman looking to have more fruitful, more cohesive, more beautiful relationships that they're cultivating by having a deeper relationship internally.
Right. For those of you who are watching, I'm just looking at the comments here. Hello, Chris. She says hello. Happy to see you both live. Well, thank you, darling. And then Heidi says, there's a lot of fuckery out there right now. Yes.
You're not wrong. Yeah.
So I've actually just got a notification. I think we have 2 group requests already, which is awesome. I also want to just also invite you guys to tag people who need to hear this. People have been DMing me saying, I've read this post, it comes from this source and this source and this source. What is this, Madeleine? And I'm like, okay, let me analyze it quickly. And when I read through it, I'm like, oh shit, your instincts were right. Something was off. Look at this, 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 and this. What do you think it's asking you to do when you actually isolate and read between the lines? And they're like, holy shit. I'm like, yeah. So that's yeah. I don't know what my point was about that, but
it's fine. I mean, there's a lot of fuckery out there. I think I think there's something for everyone in all of these different places. I've been in some of those places too, and it's not to say that there's wrong in those experiences, but there's a different way that creates and cultivates a more deeper sense of being present, having relationships that don't require an abdication of self, being aware of that in your participation of it, and also understanding that a lot of the subconscious things that play out in your experience actually do come from your past. It's the only, and the thing is what I've realized is people will perpetuate, and this is a common statement, history repeats itself when you don't understand history.
I love that. And this is also why I love, I'm like, I think it's like peeling back an onion, really.
It is.
You have to. There was something else that I wanted to say. What was it? It's okay. I think you said it all with like, you have to, history repeats itself. And if you're not looking at your history, you're living in a fantasy land, which brings me to the next point.
Okay, bring it up. Tell us everything.
This one I'm going to read to you guys first, and then we're going to break it down, because this one speaks to the illusion that people are putting out there for you. And like, one of my favorite things on this planet to do is to actually read between the lines and call it, because it's a valuable skill.
I love that about you.
It's a valuable skill. They also hate it. They also hate that, you know, about me. It's a novelty at first for them when people say, oh, I want the truth or whatever, or I want to be seen. Want to be seen
until you see them. I know, I get it. I'm the same.
Yeah. So I'm going to read this statement, and this is what we wrote about the free 4 to 5 week part series that we're going to be doing. So it says, okay, this 4 to 5 part series is going to be about the hottest topics that seem to be creating the deepest confusion: entitlement, relationship wars, rights, wrongs in relationships, false beacons of leadership through, like I mentioned earlier, societal sublimation. In other words, it's okay to lie to yourself. Here's how you do it some more. It's like adding, we're already in the matrix, we're already trying to figure it out. And then here, let's add another fantasy layer on top and confuse you so you don't even know. Like it's like double inception almost.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's okay to lie to yourself more. Here's how you do it. Here's how you do it some more, and how they might be continuing this in your relational issues and creating more of the same social constructs you are already unconsciously abiding by, just packaged in a new way. And this is where people get tripped up with. If you love reading fantasy novels, people love stories. Of course, we relate to characters, we personify them, we take them in, and we also personify and project ourselves onto the characters. So it's deeply affecting. It programs you. So be careful. Just because people have a talent for saying things in a really nice way doesn't,
sometimes in not a nice way.
Yeah.
So it's the intrigue of exploring a different way of saying it, but it's deeper than that, because there are still underlying, as you mentioned, societal programming that exists in that pocket.
Speaking to your vulnerabilities, feeding them. And I'm going to get to that. Let me read the rest.
Okay.
And creating more of the same social constructs you are already unconsciously abiding by in a new package, just packaged new. Just because that language or the face changes doesn't mean it's new or good for you. The process of accepting inverted craziness is called sublimation. It means that you no longer perceive reality properly, and this is a cause of faulty reality testing. It means that you no longer perceive, I said that, creating a new addition to a continued and compounded fantasy distortion makes you more fractured, desperate, and it shortens your attention span by averting your attention further away from what you want to experience. This is dissonance. You are here and you're clocking yourself further away from your central mean. That's dissonance. And it's a defense system. It creates, is what we called dissociation. So I wanted to add to that as well, just these couple of thoughts. So when you do that, you begin to look outside of yourself more. You start getting desperate because it's pushing those buttons. I need. And then what tends to happen in those situations is your attention span shortens because you're disassociating. You're not holding your presence within you. So it's easy to trigger you. And it's playing on your core vulnerable wounds. Like I said, shortens your presence. You are missing from the current experience you're having. And this ensures that you are always chasing something that is just a little bit out of your reach.
The carrot.
And then you get that experience and you feel empty, like I mentioned earlier. And then you're off to look for the next thing that might hopefully fulfill you.
The answer. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see if I missed anything here with yourself and everyone. Right. And that's when you are going to be inundated with content that this one's saying, and because you like fantasy, this one looks hooky, you know, you don't even know that you're trying to consume. You're consuming, you're allowing the outside world in, consuming you. And while you consume that, you're basically consuming yourself empty. It's like this.
Well, you're streaming your power out this way. You're saying somebody else knows better. And sometimes they have an awareness, but when it becomes a teaching that you have to live into, and that like, if I'm not the ultimate feminine woman, for example, then I'm going to try and mold myself to fit into that versus discovering who I am as a woman, which is much more powerful than trying to appear like a feminine woman. And so there's just one example, and a lot of different terminology gets tossed around like it's nothing, but it does place your attention span and then some sort of model to fit into versus bringing it here and understanding and being aware of how you're recreating something you've already experienced. And sometimes that is a relationship with a coach. So I remember when I was exploring the coaching realm, I stumbled across a group of people that really spoke to me in those moments. And then as I moved, not me.
In the States, we were fighting with during my
echo chamber. Sorry. Yeah, sorry,
okay. Good. And then as I moved through that experience, I actually realized that the type of people and the dynamic that I was experiencing in that group and the lack of real care and there were some real things that were not great. And even just the way that business was operating. As I started to come back, I realized that I was literally playing out the level of care that I had in my very early relationships, what it meant to have no responsibility, no accountability. And I was experiencing that in other people. And so a lot of coaches will say, if I'm triggering you, then it must be for you. And you have to stop yourself because a trigger comes from something deeper. And it doesn't mean that person holds the answer, but what they are giving you context into is that I know better.
Yeah, exactly. That's not.
And that's not going to actually help you. You have to get there yourself. Like at the end of the day, it has to be your experience. So the dissonance that you talk about, it's literally you're placing all of your awareness out there. And part of it is a learning, but it needs to always come inwards so that you are aware of what you're creating. And a lot of people say you don't have to be aware.
That's not true. You
Why are
can.
you, why are you human? Why are we human if we're not meant to be aware on some, I mean, we're alive, there's a consciousness that exists.
I've never
So
heard
it's
that
like,
before.
I know, but it's really understanding that the relationship and the intimacy is an internal experience, and then it filters out into the world. And then when there's that level of stability, then you can look at these things with different eyes
Yeah,
instead of how is this going to fix me?
totally.
Um,
Actually, I have heard the thing that it's just said in many different ways of
yes,
like, you do not need to be aware.
yeah,
It's utter rubbish.
something else is handling it for you.
Okay, so for those of you who are still watching,
Mhm.
we want to like help us vote. We've come up with like 8 so far, like topics of
So far. Yeah.
so far. And we're gonna read this out a little bit, and then you're gonna like choose. You can choose as many as you want. You can vote on your top 3 if you like. But we want to hear about what you've heard, what you're most interested in hearing about, what you've heard about it perhaps as well. And then the rest of these lives, this is the only live that we're going to be doing here on our page about this free series. And then from you picking some of these things I'm about to read to you, we're going to actually focus on those first in the group when we start addressing them with the lives. So, okay, so have you heard
So
of
I just want to preface though here, this is really for people who have been observing a lot of these paradigms and just kind of recently or in the last few months kind of sensing that maybe there's some things that are a little bit off here. Even some of your most prized possessions in terms of coaches and teachers, you're just kind of like, I don't know what's quite off here, but there's something I'm not resonating with anymore. This is going to be for you.
Yeah, this is going to be for you. So the first and one of the most popular ones is the polarity teachings.
Yeah.
Feminine, masculine. Another one that follows on from that is dominance and submission.
Yeah.
So 1, polarity teachings. 2, dominance and submission. The other one is spiritual twin flame stuff. Oh my God.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And then Joanna came up with this one, spiritual marriages. I'd never heard that before. So I'm going to look into that concept a little bit more, and I'm going to go and see what the fuck's going on there. And then relational entitlement. This was what you wrote, relational entitlement and expectations. So that's
this is really about when you head into these paradigms, then all of a sudden you think all of these things need to come to you, and then you start operating from that place, which still pushes what you want completely away. So it's like, yeah, it's a big one.
I think that's closely tied to roles and relationships, which is
true.
And then the war of relationships, gender wars.
Man, it's so rampant.
Did I get all of them? I think so.
Yeah. No, your most favorite topic. You need to number 5.
Oh, relationship psychosis. How could I not see it?
Oh, yes. Yes.
I'm like, I want to write about relationship psychosis. And then you're like, Madeleine, dial it down just a little. I'm like, is that too much?
No, it's true.
Let's talk about this. Okay.
So we want you to vote on these topics because obviously we want to create the best 5-part series for you. So we want you to vote, but then we also want you to kind of share with us if there's a topic that creates the most triggers for you, the most insecurity, the most confusion. Like, we want to know what those topics are because we will address them in the group. And then if there are areas of relationship coaching that you feel like you're modeling. So I use the feminine one because it's the most like popular right now. If you're trying to be a feminine woman and you're trying to model what some of those popular feminine coaches are teaching, you're not going to get there like that. Like, just point blank, any modeling of any form is going to leave you more frustrated than liberated. So if you're watching some of these coaching, or you're trying to put yourself into these teachings and you're not really getting there, or you're always just a little bit behind, we want to know where those areas are. And then who are you currently comparing yourself to, or relating your current experience to, or your current life to? And who's your measuring stick right now? Like, who have you put on the known, standard of what it is that you're exploring? So we're going to give you the opportunity to do that. And we want to hear from you, because this isn't fun for us unless you guys are actually engaged with it.
Yeah, so they've asked for me to like, okay, so I'm going to actually copy and paste these topics and questions you just asked into the comments, because Dale's just asked for it. I've just hit enter, check it under in the comments. I've just posted it there. So basically it's polarity teachings, masculine, feminine, spiritual twin flames, spiritual marriage. And that was something Jack Morgan came up with. Relational entitlement, expectations, relationship psychosis, domination, dominance, and
domination. I mean, it often feels like that, doesn't it?
Roles and relationships, the war on relationships. So okay, Jen was, and then you guys can just read the rest of what the questions are that we want you to consider and share with us. Okay, let's look at the rest of the comments here before we have anything, we wrap it up here. Kristen says, I don't get the twin flame and spiritual marriage thing. Hasn't resonated for me so far. I'm interested to learn, she says. Yes, relationship psychosis, Krista says. She's voting for that. Coming your way.
It's coming to a Facebook group near you.
This one is going to fucking blow your mind. It's my favorite thing. I'm excited I am about it.
I mean, all of these topics are, at the end of the day, going, like, it's fun. It's going to be
fun. I don't know about you. Yeah. Anyway.
Christina says roles and relationships. So yeah, like, we're off to a good start. It looks like these topics are definitely good ones. And what we're also going to paint in that group too, before we kind of cut off here, is that the normal that you might be experiencing now does not equate to mentally healthy. So like, where you're actually feeling like you are in a great place in your nervous system, in your life, in your mind, and mentally healthy does not equate to normal. So like, it kind of feels like a contradiction, but it's not once you're actually embodied. And what we're going to give you the opportunity to do in the group is kind of decide for yourself how being mentally healthy and choosing yourself and becoming yourself will actually go against, at times, what is being societally sublimated for you to think that you're kind of crazy because you're going against the grain just a little bit, but it's not from a chaotic, disruptive place.
Yeah.
It's literally a very deep inner relationship with yourself. Absolutely. So we as a duo, we're advocating for you to be, love, and own yourself as being normal. And then the mentally healthy, as it's deemed in the world, is really for the world, and how you operate in the world is going to be
abnormal.
More abnormal, yeah.
So basically what you're saying here is that normal does not equate to mentally healthy. And if you're looking at these other groups, for an example, they're advocating for you to like abdicate yourself, give up yourself, role play, deny yourself, exit yourself so that they can be internalized instead. That looks normal, but it's not mentally, emotionally healthy for you. In fact, it's not even physically healthy for you. And then the mental health, what's mentally healthy for you will not equate to what they're doing in that group or in a school or whatever. And Jen, you came up with some brilliant examples of, I don't know if you guys also drop some examples of where you see this happening. And people are so afraid of like being alone, standing in. And this goes back to what I called earlier, what did I call it? Social reinforcement. This is how they do it. So So yeah, you had
Well,
some.
and the examples are, you know, if you look at the course of time, and we talked about this because I really wanted to pull a relational example of where society would deem something to be completely acceptable and completely normal. And we don't even have to go that far to reference where the world was and where it is now. And we're just going to skip back to the 50s.
You should post a picture in the comments.
I'm going to, yeah. The 50s was a perfect example of how it was normal to speak to women as though they only were good for specific things.
And they needed
And
to
this
be
is
obedience. And they
there's
needed to take this advice from men.
so right now we have social media, and I love and hate social media. So I love social media because it's given people a voice. I hate social media because it's given people a voice.
Right.
And in the past, the inundation of content was much more minimized, but then it's much more precise. So in the 50s, they had newspapers, they had radios, but I just went and Googled images of, you know, 50s housewife, and it's like 129 ways to get a husband. These are just article headlines. You read the documents now. So back then, you know, advertisements were created in this fashion. What makes you a good wife? How to get a good man? How to please your man? Then there were also articles about men saying if your women are out of line, then they deserve to be spanked. This was normal.
Oh, daddy.
This was normal. This was highly talked about. It was the topic and flavor of the week. And so people that walked in line were following societal norms. And then there were people who were like, well, wait a minute. Why is my entire existence about how to find a man in 129 different ways?
Yeah.
And people started to think, okay, wait, is there a better quality of life here? And so if you think about where we were in the 50s to where we are now, what was normal then is not necessarily normal now, but a lot of those things still live and breathe in our own experiences, whether we want to acknowledge them or be conscious of them or not.
Yep.
But we
4 minutes left before the power goes.
Okay. So anyways, that was an example. That was an example of where something that's normal doesn't necessarily work for the aggregate of society, but people adhere to that because it's normal. So in order to really come back to self, it's not that you're abdicating those things, it's that you're choosing them for yourself.
You're choosing them.
Yeah, so we ultimately want to do this 5-part series in our Facebook group, and the links are available for you to join, and we hope that you do. We want your engagement in this capacity, so we want you to be voting on the topics that are most relevant for you, where you feel the deepest sense of confusion, and ask the questions. So if there's things that you're actually perturbed by, we want to know, because we'll address them specifically. Like, this isn't about us speaking for our own sake. It's really just to give you a platform to experience something different that maybe you're not already seeing. So if you want to join us, the series starts next Thursday. We will do one call that's dedicated just towards the topic of your choice. And then we will spend another call doing live Q&As where we'll get to answer your questions, so that you have some ability to kind of have some personalization in the experience. And we'll be doing that for 5 weeks, and you'll be picking the topic. So we hope to see you in our group. The links are all provided for you. If you have any questions, continue to ask on this thread. Madeline and I will watch as we go along.
Please tag as well.
And if that's exactly it. If there are if there are people in your world that you're having these conversations with, that maybe you want a bigger group to kind of come together, then please share this with your friends. Tag the women in your life that have great things going for them, and they just haven't been able to lock it down on love. We want to know who they are. So thank you for watching. Thank you, Madeline.
Thank you for watching. And I just, as you're closing, I had one more thought about like why we want people to participate in this group. And if you do invite yourself, or like you request to join, commit to this 5-week thing.
Yeah.
Commit to it. Participate, be deliberate about it. The other thing is cut out distractions. Get out of there. There was another thought. And the reason why I want that commitment is because we're already showing up. We're here for it. We want you to put in the same amount of commitment, not for us. I mean, I'm already doing this for myself. I mean, regardless of what happens with this, if it even goes nowhere, I don't care. I want you to feel the same way about you choosing to participate in your life. And you can do that through this participation that we're going to experience together for yourself. And that needs to be a commitment. Keep your promises to yourself. It's one of the ways in which you actually, like, instead of feeling hollowed out anymore, you actually start filling yourself in. So
yeah,
I will, links are there. We're going to keep an eye on the thread. Anything else, Jen? Lost?
No, I think she's clean.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Thank you, Madeline. Thank you for everyone watching, and we will see you in the next live.
Bye.
Bye.